So welcome again, everyone, to our webinar, Navigating Job Transitions and Uncertainty. Thank you so much for joining us. If we haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Anne McCabe. I am the CEO and a partner here at Curo Private Wealth. And I'm joined by my lovely co-host and partner, Teresa Roberts, who is also our COO. And we are thrilled to have you here with us today to talk about what can be a challenging topic to discuss, but also a timely one in light of what we are currently experiencing in the economy. So, whether you find yourself navigating a job transition, exploring new opportunities, or you're just simply trying to prepare for what the future may hold, you've come to the right place. Hopefully, we will arm you with some great information, and we very much realize that these changes, whether they're planned or they're unexpected, can bring all sorts of emotions with them. Sometimes it's excitement, anxiety, uncertainty, but these times can also present awesome opportunities for growth, reinvention, and new possibilities. So, our goal today is to provide you with practical strategies, insights, and confidence to move forward with clarity and purpose. So before we dive in, just a couple of housekeeping notes. We do have an hour allocated for this webinar. So Teresa and I have some prepared comments that we'll speak for about 30 minutes on, and then we will open it up for Q&A for about another 30 minutes. So if you have questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. We are also recording, and I did just check, it is recording, and we will post the recording to our YouTube channel in the next few days. So don't worry about taking notes, stay present, and just focus on the conversation we're going to have. And while I'm on the topic of YouTube, please make sure to subscribe to our channel so that you are alerted every time we drop new content, which is quite frequently. So with that housekeeping behind us, I am going to turn it over to Teresa to kick us off.
Hello again. Thank you all so much for joining us. And again, today's topic is around navigating job transition and uncertainty. So where we want to start with just a simple reminder that if this is you and this is what you're experiencing, that you are not alone. So layoffs have been announced by U.S. employers have risen 245% in February, and that's just since the beginning of the year. We're feeling this not only in the public sector, with federal workers, 62,000 of which have been dismissed from agencies in just the first 2 months of this year. We're also seeing layoffs start to tick up at tech companies, with 78 tech companies laying off almost 20,000 workers since the start of the year. So as Anne shared, it can be an emotional burden to navigate this, but know that there are options and there are strategies to help you manage what can be a very challenging time. So where we want to start, before we dive into the financial strategy, let's start with managing your emotions. If you have ever attended one of the Curo presentations before, if you listen to Living Richly with Curo, our podcast, we talk a lot about centeredness and centering yourself in your decision making. So where we want to start is allowing yourself the time to grieve. Job loss, especially if you've been a career professional. And I have heard stories, unfortunately, in the DC metro area of people who have worked for government agencies for over 20 years who unexpectedly find themselves without a job. So there is a loss to grieve. But what's important to remember is that you want to not dwell in that grief. You want to allow yourself to process and then start the process of moving forward. So another recommendation we have is to establish and stick to a routine. One way we like to look at it is that looking for a job is your job. So maintaining a level of routine. Now, that's not to say that you're not due some time off, some time away, a vacation, but think of it just as that. This is just a little bit of time to reset and then I'm going to get back to my schedule. Continue to try to get up at a certain time in the morning, take a lunch break, get out of the house during work hours, because that routine will help you process and to establish a system for moving into the next phase of your life. And as Anne mentioned in the intro, while obstacles like this can seem like a door closing, sometimes it represents a new door opening. So this is also a really good time to explore new opportunities for a career. Maybe you had gotten complacent or stagnant in the position that you had. Now is a time to reassess and determine maybe what the future looks like. Try very hard to not internalize the rejection, especially if you are starting the job search process. There are only so many things that you can do. You can present yourself well, you can brush up on the interviewing skills, but a lot of it is left up to the hiring agent or whoever it is that's responsible for the decision. And again, they're looking at multiple candidates. So try not to internalize every non-callback or every denial, and know that it is a numbers game to a certain aspect, and that one day you will strike pay dirt. And again, distinguish between what you can control and what is outside of your control. So work on the things that improve yourself, brush up the CV, practice some interviewing, get out there. But again, there are parts of the job seeking and hiring process that you just have no control over, and you have to be willing to accept that. View this obstacle again as an opportunity to do something different, try something different, to reposition yourself for a new phase of life. And of course, as always, and we like to say this a lot, seek professional help if you need it. It may not just be about the financial strategies that Anne and I are offering today. You may be having some emotional challenges. If you are a person who is prone to anxiety or depression, reach out and seek professional help that can help you process those emotions if you need to.
All right. So, as we have already said a couple of times, whether or not this was an anticipated change or an unexpected change, you have choices. So, now we're going to get into some specific tips that are mostly financial related to help you through this transition period. So, first of all, we want to assess our short term situation. And the first thing we want to do is understand how much cash we have access to. When we say cash, we mean liquid assets. So, think your checking account, savings account, maybe some short term CDs, and even some non retirement investments that you could get your hands on relatively quickly. So, understanding how much liquidity we have is the first step in this situation. This is why me and Atrisa and all of the advisors on our team, when we're talking to clients outside of a job transition, always focus on cash reserves or emergency fund. And we always say we want to make sure you have enough cash in the event of an unexpected situation like a job loss or an unexpected expense. Second, we want to review how much we owe. So, what do our fixed expenses look like, and our debts or our liabilities? That could be a mortgage, car loan, student loans, but really writing this down on paper or in an Excel spreadsheet so you can see it clear is very important. Comparing what we have access to in liquidity with what we owe in liabilities. And then the last calculation we want to do is to understand how long our cash position or our cash reserves can support our current expenses. So, for example, if we have current expenses of $10,000 a month and we've got $20,000 in savings, we have about 2 months to find another job or figure out something, right? So, generally speaking, when we're recommending for clients to have sufficient cash reserves, we're typically saying a minimum of 6 months to 12 months, depending upon your situation. So, hopefully you have cash reserves that you can access, and hopefully you have longer than 2 months, but really understanding what that looks like is super important to have that awareness. Second thing we want to do once we have clarity around our existing numbers is we want to take a look at that budget or the spending plan. And if we've already lost our jobs, we really want to find ways to quickly reduce spending. So think of those low hanging fruit expenses that we can just grab and cross out. So think about dining out, entertainment, some of those subscriptions. Maybe it's streaming services that we really don't need and have, or personal travel. So anything that is discretionary, which means it's not necessary, we want to temporarily, while we're in this transition period, really be disciplined about not spending in those areas. Also, take a look at if there is a way to reduce some of your fixed expenses. So perhaps you haven't shopped out your car or home insurance in a while. This could be an easy way to try to reduce some of your expenses. And then also, this may seem like a silly or small thing, but be really sensitive to minimizing your utility costs. So simple things like making sure you turn off the lights when you leave the room, or making sure that your temperature in the house is set at an appropriate level. It's not too hot, not too cold. So the gas bill or the electric bill is reasonable. So these are just some simple ways to quickly cut out some of those expenses to help the cash flow situation in the immediate. And then let's talk about using cash reserves, because when we are saving and we are replenishing or putting money into our cash reserves, it can be emotionally challenging to sort of switch course and start to use our savings. We're used to saving, we're used to building those up. But it's important to remember that the reason that these are called emergency funds or emergency cash reserves is for emergencies. And if you find yourself in a job transition, you got laid off unexpectedly, that qualifies as an emergency. So please feel free to use your savings that you have accumulated. And again, we appreciate that it can be emotionally challenging to sort of switch course, but this is exactly what they are there for. And using cash on hand is way better than accessing very high interest debt like credit cards. So we would much rather you use the cash reserves that you have built up versus getting into debt.
Okay, so now that you've had a chance to reassess your short-term financial situation, now we want to start looking at what benefits there might be available for you. So you want to find out quickly if you qualify for unemployment insurance benefits and how they change if you receive other payments, like a severance or a buyout. So you want to make sure that you're intentionally looking for this information and that you understand and follow the benefit requirements. You also want to start the process as soon as possible. It may actually take a few weeks to process your unemployment claim. So as soon as you know that you are eligible, you want to go ahead and begin the process to limit the downtime between when those benefits start. And some other tips is that you can register with your state's employment services when you file for benefits, because many states will require that you start searching for a job upon starting unemployment benefits. So be mindful of that. You want to be sure that you report wages you are earning, even if it's from part-time or temporary work, and stop claiming your benefits as soon as you return to full-time work. You want to make sure that the way you are managing unemployment benefits could not be classified as fraudulent. The
Very
other
important.
big concern, the other big concern about being unemployed or being between jobs is health coverage. It can be very expensive to manage health and medical expenses when you're not covered by a group plan. So you want to find the best ways to be able to maintain that health coverage. Now, one of the ways to start is by reviewing COBRA, or you're offering under the Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. Don't worry about remembering it, just call it COBRA. But if you were previously covered through your employer, you may be eligible for continuation of those benefits for up to 18 months. The thing to remember, though, is that when you were covered under an employer's plan, your employer was most likely covering a portion of that cost for you. Under COBRA, All of that cost will now be assumed by you, the insured, so coverage can be expensive. So you also want to look at other options for health coverage, maybe through your state's marketplace, through the insurance exchange. And you also want to be able to take advantage of things like an health savings account, if you had one and one is available to you. As a reminder, health savings accounts are portable. That means you always own them. They are not tied to your employer's group plan. So if you were contributing to an HSA, that might be a good source to help offset some medical costs during this transition period. And of course, like we also like to remind you, working with a professional can also be of benefit to you. So you want to look up insurance agents or brokers who might be able to do some research for you to determine what's most affordable, finding insurance on your own, or maybe continuing under your COBRA coverage.
If I can just add something, sorry,
Please,
Teresa,
of course.
on the HSA note, one of the things that folks are not aware of with HSAs that's very unique to HSAs is you can actually reimburse yourself for medical expenses from your HSA for expenses that you had years ago, assuming your HSA was in place. So let's say you have money in an HSA and now you've lost your job and you're looking for access to cash or liquidity. Ideally, we've got those cash reserves and ideally you'll get a new job soon. But sometimes that doesn't happen exactly the way that we plan. So if you need access to additional liquidity and you have an HSA, you may reimburse yourself for qualified medical expenses that you may have had a couple of years ago. Again, just remember that number one, you want to be able to prove that it was a qualified medical expense. And number two, you had to have had the HSA open, but the medical expense does not have to happen this year. It could be in previous years, and that could be a way that you can access additional cash reserves. Again, we want to try to prevent for people to go into debt as a result of the situation. So just wanted to mention that
No, it's a
unique
very good tip.
unique quality of the HSA is one of the many reasons that we love HSAs at Curo.
Yeah. And the other reason is because they're the triple tax savings vehicle, right? The money
Yes.
that you contributed to it, reduced your taxable income, the assets have grown tax deferred. And when you take them out for those qualified health expenses, you take those distributions cash free. So it's very helpful to remember that even if you had the past expenses, you might be able to tap into your HSA for some cash flow in the short term. Thanks so much, Anne.
Yeah, of course.
You also want to explore options for your retirement plan. And the name of your plan could look different based on where you're employed. If you're with a tech company, it might be a 401k. If you're with the federal government, it's called a thrift savings plan or a TSP. If you work for some nonprofit organization, you might have a 403b. But the idea is that you do have options for the money that you have been saving in your employer's retirement plan. Typically, it comes down to four options. So we want to review those very quickly. The first one is to leave the assets in the former employer's plan if the plan permits it. Now, there are sometimes balance restrictions around whether or not the assets can stay. Some plan administrators will say if the account value is less than $5,000, that they will automatically process a distribution of that money back to you. But if the plan permits it, you are allowed to leave the money where it is. Now, whether or not this option makes sense for you depends, but I always tell people it's better to leave it put than to take it out without knowing the consequences otherwise. So the second option is you can always roll the assets over to your new employer's plan if they have a similar plan once you are reemployed. So many 401k custodians will allow you to roll in to their new plan the assets from your old plan. That may be an option. And that rollover is done as a non-taxable transaction to you. The third option is to move the assets out of the employer's plan into an individual arrangement account or an IRA, as we call it. And as long as you do this directly from the plan into the individual retirement account, it will also be a non-taxable transaction for you. Now, some plans may require that you do tax withholding. So you want to speak with your plan administrator regarding that. There may be some default federal tax withholding for that. But as long as the assets move into another qualified plan, then if taxes were withheld, you would be due those taxes via a refund when you file in the next plan year. The other thing to remember about an IRA is that many of those, unless you're working with an advisor like Ann or myself, are self-directed. So you want to also look at the options for how that money is invested. I can't tell you the numbers of times I have seen people roll out their assets from their 401k. They got cash that was mailed as a check to their IRA account at, you name the custodian, Charles Schwab, Fidelity, E-Trade, and they never reinvested the money. It just sat there as cash. So, of course, seek professional help. Ann and I are here to support you. But if you are not working with an advisor, then you want to make sure that you are reinvesting those assets as soon as you can. And then, of course, the fourth option is to take a cash distribution and deal with those tax consequences. For most retirement plan savers, you are making tax deductible contributions to your 401k plan. That means the money has never been taxed. Now, there are some options to make Roth contributions. It depends on if you elected for those when you set up the plan. But if you take a cash distribution, more often than not, it's going to be considered a taxable distribution to you and taxed as ordinary income. So taxed at the marginal tax bracket rate. And let's say you are laid off or terminated, 3/4 of the way through the year, you probably still have pretty significant reportable income in that year. So you want to be mindful of taking taxable distributions from a retirement plan with your former employer. And then the other thing we always like to say during this, what benefits do I have time, is to consider side hustles and gig work. With the transformation of technology, work looks different for so many people. And there are so many platforms that offer access to non-traditional employment. So you want to look at platforms like Upwork or Fire or TaskRabbit that will let you know what gigs are available in writing or graphic design, or you could be a virtual assistant or home services. So there are opportunities, even on a part-time way, to keep income flowing while you're in this job transition phase. There's also the options of driving for Uber or Lyft or delivering with Instacart, which you can do on your own time and at will and in your own pace when it works, so that you can create an income stream while you're looking for your next phase. And then if you have specialized skills, if you want to do tutoring or consulting, or even if you are great at crocheting, you can turn some of those skills into an income stream through either social media. I mean, how many things have I purchased on Instagram from someone who was just posting there, or online marketplaces like Etsy? So don't forget, we say looking for the job is your job, but it's also an opportunity to do some side hustling if you have to get some cash flow going in this transitional period.
Yeah, there are so many opportunities to generate some income that did not exist,
Yes.
just a couple decades ago. So we are, as most of you know, in the DC metro area, and that means we have a lot of federal employees. So the next three slides or so are specific to federal employees. So if you are not one, just bear with us. Maybe go refill your coffee.
Or maybe
For
you
a
know
couple of,
someone
or
and you
maybe
can
you know
share this with
someone.
them.
Thank you very much. Yes, share with a friend who is a federal employee. But there is an early retirement type that is for employees of the federal government who are involuntarily separated from service without cause. If you did something to get fired for cause, this does not apply to you. Okay. So hopefully that is not the case for anybody on this webinar. So if you are involuntarily separated from service without cause, this could be because of a RIF or a reduction in force. It could be a job reassignment outside of your area, a job position termination, which we're seeing a lot of right now, or a downgrade of more than 2 levels. You could potentially qualify for this discontinued service retirement or DSR through the federal government. If you want more information, kind of to go in the weeds, you want to check out chapter 44 of the FERS/CSRS handbook. This will go over all of the nitty-gritty details. Or we want you to consult with your specific agency to see what applies to you. But what happens here is you may be able to apply for the DSR and your associated annuity could begin immediately. So this would be a form of income for you. Now, in terms of qualifications, there we go. We just wanted you to wait for it. Qualification requirements. So you need to be age 50 with 20 years of service or any age with 25 years of service. So we actually had a call with a client a couple of weeks ago. He's only 47, but he has been with the federal government for more than 25 years. So he was actually offered this DSR. You have to have 5 years of minimum credible civilian service as a requirement. You must separate from a position subject to FERS or CSRS and have been covered for at least 1 year in the last 2 years before you separate from service. And you could not turn down what's called a reasonable offer. So if you are offered another job from your agency, you can't turn that down or that disqualifies you because basically from the government's eyes, if you're turning down a reasonable offer, you could take that other job versus, an early retirement. So those are the qualification requirements generally. Now, one of the nice things about this is number one, it is an immediate annuity. And unlike when you normally retire, quote unquote, early, which comes with a reduction in benefits, this DSR immediate annuity does not have a reduction in benefits, which is a huge, positive to this situation. There is also the potential for you to get a FERS supplement. So if you retire before age 62, and you are under the FERS retirement system, you can receive an additional special annuity supplement until age 62. The reason they choose 62 is because that is when you can start collecting Social Security benefits under an early collection time. So to qualify for this, though, you have to be minimum retirement age, or MRA. And that age, similar to Social Security, depends on when you were born, but it ranges from 55 to 57 for most employees. So the example of the the client we spoke with a couple of weeks ago, he did not qualify for this because, as I mentioned, he is only 47. So that's something to be aware of. Other benefits that are nice that you get to keep under this program is your health insurance. So Teresa was talking about how important it is to be able to continue your health insurance. You do get to continue health insurance with this DSR, and your life insurance can also continue. This is as long as the retiree was enrolled for at least 5 years before the retirement. Now, there is cost of living adjustments in some cases. So under FERS with the DSR, retirees do not receive COLAs until they're age 62. This is a very important thing to be aware of because COLAs are those cost of living adjustments are incredibly important when we talk about any sort of income, pension, Social Security, et cetera. So again, talking about that client with whom we spoke a couple weeks ago, who's 47, this was a huge deterrent to him taking this early retirement package because he's only 47 and would not get any cost of living adjustments until age 62. Less of a big deal if you're, already 60 or 61. So just something to consider. If you retire under CSRS, COLAs do apply immediately. So important distinction between the two different kinds of retirement plans through the federal government. We also think it's really important anytime you're going through a job transition, or again, just preparing for what the future may hold, even if you haven't already lost your job, we want you to take a look at that financial plan and take a look at your financial goals. Again, it's really important. We're financial planners, so we talk about this all the time, but it's really important to take a look at that plan, see how we're doing, have the clarity and the awareness. And once we have that clarity, then we can plan for the future. And if you have not looked at your financial plan in a while, you may be pleasantly surprised because depending upon the assumptions that were used in your financial plan, the markets have done extremely well over the last couple of years. So, if you were using more moderate conservative assumptions in your projections, your plan may look even better than was projected to look a couple of years ago. So, I know it can be a little scary, especially if you're going through a job transition, but pulling out that financial plan, having a meeting with us if we are your advisors or another advisor, or if you do it yourself, taking that plan out and looking at it is a really important thing to do in this sort of situation, because really focusing on our long-term goals can help us stay motivated, can give us that clarity to make smart decisions in the short run and not make emotional decisions, which is really important when we're talking about financial planning.
Yeah, about that centeredness.
Yes.
Okay, so you may be joining us on the call and you are still working, but the future of that position is uncertain. This section is for you. We want to encourage you to start planning now. I have a personal saying where I say, don't sit around and wait for life to happen. You make it happen. So if it is uncertain, you want to start getting the ducks in a row so that you are not caught off guard. And again, go back to that emergency fund or your cash reserves. Again, to reiterate what Ann has already shared, we typically recommend 6 months of those non-discretionary living expenses. So think about all the things you can't live without. A roof, so mortgage or rent, food, clothing. You may not need new clothing, utilities, those things that you must have to exist. And you want to have 6 months of those expenses built up in cash reserves. If you are not there, now is the time to start prioritizing that. The other thing to remember is that you want to keep the funds in a savings account where you have immediate access. This money should be completely liquid to you. Now, that doesn't mean we want it in a checking account or stuffed in a mattress or in a mason jar on your kitchen counter. With interest rates being high, it's made borrowing high, but it's also made savings account yields, money market yields really, really attractive. So you want to look for those options where you can maximize your yield, your earning potential on that money without tying it up so that you can access it in a pinch. You also want to, during this time, use your credit wisely. You want to beware of credit card balances that have high interest. Now is the time to start getting a handle on those. You want to try to pay those down or pay off as much high interest rate debt as you possibly can. It may also be an opportunity to negotiate a lower interest rate with your lender. Reach out and ask. Maybe because you've had, great history with them, they'll agree to lower those interest payments. But if you can do those things now while you're still working, it sets you up better in the case that you do experience a job loss. And then the other thing to remember during an uncertain time is to avoid major purchases if you can, especially those that require financing. Now is probably not a good time to buy or lease a new car or to go out and shop for a new home. So if you can avoid those major financed purchases until you have more job security, we recommend that you do just that. And again, you want to start networking and upskilling. So this is where you want to start exploring what the future could look like, even while you're still employed. Explore new career possibilities. Where might your current experience and skills translate to? What kinds of industries? What kinds of companies? You want to develop new skills if you can. There's so much available online as well as in person where you can get new certifications or new skills to add to your resume, and also starting to build a little bit of a professional network. So attend industry events with other professionals like you, network with some former colleagues that you worked with, maybe at a company that you left to take on your new position. Get active on platforms like LinkedIn, where you can build a network of people who might be able to point you in the right direction should you face a job loss. And then also, if you feel really uncertain, go ahead and start brushing up on those interview skills. It may have been a few years since you last had to do an interview. So maybe doing some practice with friends or family just to get you comfortable in the case. Again, the better prepared you are for that uncertainty, the better you'll be able to tackle that obstacle should you find yourself facing that loss of a job. So now that's going to bring us to the end of our prepared remarks, but we do want to leave time at the end of this presentation for your questions. We are here for you. So please use the Q&A feature in the Zoom webinar to ask any questions that you may have. Of course, we've also listed our email address here as well. Maybe you have a question that's a little more personalized that you would rather not share in the Q&A chat feature. Feel free to send us an email at info, that's INFO, at CuroPrivateWealth.com.
All right. And as we're waiting for questions to come in, we did get a question for somebody who joined late about whether or not the deck will be available. So I'll just answer this for everybody in case there is another person in that situation. We are recording this and we will drop it on our YouTube channel, hopefully just in the next few days. So please make sure to subscribe on the YouTube channel. It's Curo Private Wealth, and you will be alerted when we drop the recording of the webinar. So thank you for joining and thank you for that question.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have, oh, yeah.
No, go ahead,
We
please.
do have a question. Can you talk a little bit more about using retirement funds for emergency, or is that something that is specific to each person? You want to tackle that
You
one
want me to start?
first?
Sure.
Yeah, and I'll add in if
Yeah,
need be.
so there are ways that you might be able to use retirement funds for an emergency. So again, think about like 401ks, IRA accounts. We have to start with a little context. So I already mentioned that in many cases, in most cases, those assets are what we call qualified, or means that if you take a distribution, there is going to be taxes recognized on that money. The other thing to remember, though, is that if you are younger than age 59 and a half, there is also what's called a premature distribution penalty that might be associated with taking a distribution from a retirement account early. So remember that as well. So taxes plus a 10% premature distribution penalty on any money you pull out of a retirement plan. But there are some exceptions to those penalties. Now, not a whole lot of exceptions around the taxation, but there is one you can consider. But if you want to avoid the premature penalty, all of these are listed at like irs.gov, or you can work with a professional. But there are things like a hardship distribution that you can take. If you qualify for what is a deemed hardship, loss of a job and loss of income could be one of those. You could take a distribution from your retirement funds and have that 10% penalty waived. Again, you will still have to pay taxes. There are also options around maybe like a first-time home purchase, even though we don't think you should be doing that during a job uncertainty or time of uncertainty or job loss. And then also a new one that was recently added is also about victims of domestic violence. If you are experiencing some violent situation at home, you might be able to tap into some retirement funds for an emergency and avoid that penalty if you're not 59 and a half yet. Now, there is another thing that you can consider to borrow money from a retirement plan like an IRA account. So every 12 months, so don't think calendar year, think 12 months, you are allowed to take a distribution from retirement funds that you can put back in within 60 days to avoid penalties and taxes. So let's say, for example, you experience a job loss and you think you have enough cash reserves to get you through, to use Anne's example, 2 months, but maybe finding a new job is taking a little longer than usual. If you think that you can be reemployed and put the money back within 60 days, then there may be an option to take a distribution from retirement funds like your IRA and roll that money back into that account within 60 calendar days without recognizing taxes or distribution penalties. The thing to remember is that you can only do this once in a 12-month period. So not January to December, but from the month you took the distribution, let's say it's in March, to the following March. So you can only do it once in that 12-month period, but that might also give you temporary access to retirement money and avoid the taxes and the penalties. Again, when you're dealing with strategies like that, I always recommend working with a professional. reach out to someone who can guide you through the process, who can hold you accountable, and also make sure you get the money back in time.
Yeah.
We've done it with and for clients in the past. So it is a strategy that's employed pretty regularly, but working with someone who knows what they're doing also helps. And
Yeah.
anything you want to add that I may have missed?
Yeah, no, just to kind of double click on the time frame to get the money back in, it is 60 calendar days,
Yes.
not business days. And if you accidentally wait 61 days, the IRS does not feel badly for you. And that is a fully taxable event. So just be very careful about that. The only other thing to mention after I reiterate the fact that we do not like for people to take retirement funds for
Mm-mm.
emergencies. So just to be clear about that, we would much rather proactive, like build up the cash reserves before an emergency happens. But again, we can appreciate that life sometimes does not go according to plan. So if you don't have access to the cash reserves, the only other thing to mention is if you were making those Roth contributions that Atrisa mentioned
Mhm.
earlier to a 401k plan or even to a Roth IRA, you are allowed to take what's called your basis, which is basically your contributions out without a penalty, because that is money that you've already been taxed on. So if you do have any Roth assets, you can look into that possibility as well. Thank you for that question. The only other
Well,
thing I thought of too,
yeah, go
Aretha, when
ahead.
you were talking about like the Fiverr and selling things on Etsy,
Hmm.
is if you do have a nice collection of maybe designer things in your closet that you may not need or may not use anymore, there are lots of places that you can sell those things as
Yes,
well online. So I know of some people who have gotten a lot of money back from selling jewelry that they no longer need or want,
yes.
or handbags or
Handbags.
things like that. Yeah,
Yeah, consignment is a
exactly.
great way to maybe even do some spring cleaning, right? And create a little bit of income while doing so.
Yes, exactly. We got to thank you. So
Yeah.
you are very welcome and thank you for joining. Oh, yeah. So let's go. Speaking of how to raise money, can we go back
Okay.
to the slide on just kind of out of the box ideas for generating more income, please?
Sure. Absolutely. Right. So some of the
Yep.
platforms we mentioned here, Upwork, Fiverr, Task Rabbit, sorry, and I've actually hired Task Rabbits for like hanging
So have
pictures
I.
and things.
Yeah. You can hire TaskRabbits for anything. I was in Austin like a few years ago, and there was this insane barbecue restaurant where people would
Hmm.
wait in line for hours, and you could hire a TaskRabbit person to wait in line for you for hours so that you didn't have to actually wait in line for barbecue. So when we say that you can find a
Yes.
TaskRabbit for anything, we really do mean pretty much anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there are also other specific sites for people who are looking to hire virtual assistants. Again, it's become really popular now and an affordable way to hire someone to help without them having to live in your area or be in your city. So look into those options as well. Virtual assisting is something you could do again at your own pace, at your own time, and just do it when it works.
All right, Teresa, can we go to our social media slide, please? So we can just
Of
remind
course.
everyone where they can find us. We are very active with creating what is hopefully interesting and helpful information and putting a lot of information out there. So please make sure if you're not already following us on YouTube or subscribe that you do that. We are also on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, our website. So lots of ways that you can find us.
I'm putting them up here. I didn't want to make everybody dizzy
Yeah, through all
by
the slides, no worries.
clicking through all the slides.
There we go. So yeah, lots of ways to stay connected with us. Atrice and I also record a podcast called Living Richly with Kiro every week, which drops every Friday. We recorded one this morning all about spring cleaning for your finances. So make sure to check that out. And I'm just gonna do a quick check on the Q&A. So we got another thank you. Have a lot of federal friends with these questions. So we'll share. Thank you so much for sharing. We hope that
Absolutely.
is helpful.
Yeah, and again, it can be a very challenging time. So also feel free to share that email address that we shared, info@curoprivatewealth.com, if you know someone who may have a specific question or need specific guidance. We can be a resource. Again, like Anne's already mentioned, we've had clients right now who are experiencing these kinds of transitions, and we're doing what we can to help them through it. And if we can extend those resources to other people and maybe help them navigate what is a difficult time, we'd be happy to.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're having tons of meetings and conversations right now about what if planning and contingency
Right.
planning and what do we do now planning. So, we always say that with financial planning, you do want to have a plan and you want to have kind of a roadmap of where you're going, but then it also needs to be flexible enough so that you can tweak and pivot when life happens. And right now, there's a whole bunch of life happening. So,
Yes.
to be
Yes.
expected. All right. Well, I think that wraps us. It doesn't look like there are any other. Oh, did I just see some? No. Okay. I think there's no more questions. So I think we are going to wrap there. But thank you again so much for joining us. We will drop this here in a few days on YouTube. So reach out if you have any questions. And I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your afternoon and you will get through this. This too
Yes.
shall pass, as we always
Yes.
say.
Take care of yourself.
Yes. All right. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.